The lies beneath. Nathan Wells had it all. Or at least, that's what he believed. A high-ranking executive at a top firm. A beautiful wife who had stood by his side for years, and a best friend he trusted like a brother. His life was a carefully built structure of success, love, and loyalty. But in an instant, that structure crumbled. The night of the accident was a blur. Headlights flashing, the screech of tires, a violent crash. When Nathan woke up in a hospital bed, pain radiating through his body, his mind was a haze of shattered memories. The doctors told him he was lucky to be alive. But as he lay there, trying to piece together what had happened, a new kind of pain settled deep in his chest, one that had nothing to do with his injuries. It started small, a look between his wife, Lauren, and his best friend, Eric, that lasted a second too long. A hushed conversation that ended abruptly when Nathan entered the room. He tried to ignore it, blaming it on paranoia, on the stress of recovery. But the signs kept coming. The quiet tension, the missing phone calls, the way Lauren avoided his touch. And then the memories began returning. The accident, the dark-colored car that had swerved into his lane, the feeling that it hadn't been an accident at all. As Nathan struggled to recover, his mind was consumed with questions. Was his wife cheating on him? Had his best friend betrayed him? And the most terrifying thought of all, was his accident truly an accident, or had someone wanted him out of the picture? The deeper he dug, the more disturbing the truth became. And Nathan realized that surviving the crash was only the beginning. The Lies Beneath, Part 2. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the hospital room as Nathan lay motionless, staring at the ceiling. His body was weak, but his mind refused to rest. The accident had left him with a fractured rib, a concussion, and deep lacerations along his arms. But none of that hurt as much as the doubt creeping into his thoughts. Lauren had been there when he woke up, holding his hand, her blue eyes filled with worry. She had whispered words of reassurance, told him how much she loved him, how scared she had been when she got the call. And for a moment, Nathan had believed her. But then Eric walked in, his best friend, the man who had been by his side since college. He looked relieved, maybe even a little too relieved. Nathan noticed the subtle way Lauren's hand slipped away from his, the way her body tensed when Eric got closer. It was subtle, but not invisible. And now it was all Nathan could think about. The first few days after the accident were a blur of painkillers and doctor's visits. Lauren was always there, hovering, checking in on him, but something felt different. There was a distance between them, one Nathan couldn't explain. And then the nightmare started. Flashes of that night. The headlights in the rearview mirror. The car speeding up behind him. The jolt of impact. But each time, the dream lasted a little longer. He started remembering details, things that didn't make sense. The car hadn't just hit him. It had followed him for miles before that. And then there was the phone call. The one he had received just minutes before the crash. He didn't remember answering it, but his gut told him it was important. Nathan reached for his phone, wincing as pain shot through his ribs. He scrolled through his call log, his fingers trembling slightly. One missed call. No number. No voice made. He exhaled sharply, his mind racing. It could have been nothing, or it could have been everything. Lauren walked in just as he locked his phone. You shouldn't push yourself, she said softly, placing a hand on his arm. The doctors said you need rest. Nathan studied her, searching for something, anything, that would tell him this was all in his head. That she was still the woman he had loved for the past 10 years. But the moment stretched too long, and the doubt only deepened. I know, he murmured. But rest was the last thing on his mind. Lavro, February 13th, 2025, 10:04. Because now, Nathan had a new goal. Find out what really happened that night. And if his suspicions were right, find out who wanted him dead. The Lies Beneath, Part 3. Nathan knew he couldn't rely on his fractured memories alone. If he wanted the truth, he needed evidence. He spent the next few days playing the part of the recovering husband, nodding along to Lauren's reassurances, pretending to be too weak to question anything. But beneath the surface, his mind was sharp, analyzing every word, every glance, every hesitation. And then, an opportunity presented itself. Lauren had left her phone on the nightstand while she went to grab coffee. It was unlocked. Nathan's heart pounded as he reached for it, his ribs screaming in protest. He swiped to her messages, scrolling past casual conversations with friends and co-workers until he saw Eric's name. There were dozens of texts, more than there should have been. He clicked on the thread. Eric, I hate seeing him like this. It's messed up. Lauren, I know, but we have to be careful. He's starting to remember things. Eric, you don't think he suspects? Lauren, I don't know. What if he just will deal with it? Nathan's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just an affair. This was something more. His fingers tightened around the phone as he forced himself to keep scrolling. Eric, are you sure the police won't look into it? Lauren, they said it was an accident. As long as he doesn't remember, everything will be fine. Nathan's body went cold. They knew. They knew the accident wasn't an accident. He placed the phone back exactly where it was and lay back, his mind spinning. His wife and his best friend had done something. Maybe they had set him up. Maybe they had been involved in the crash itself. He didn't know the full extent of their betrayal yet, but he would find out. And then he would make them pay. The first clue. That night, when Lauren was asleep, Nathan grabbed his own phone and started digging. He called his insurance company first, asking for a copy of the accident report. They agreed to send it over by email. When the file arrived, Nathan opened it with shaking hands. Single car accident. No witnesses. No other vehicles involved. That was a lie. He knew there was another car. He had seen it. He scrolled further. Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. The report listed the 911 caller, the person who had reported the accident. Eric Dawson, his best friend. Nathan clenched his jaw. If Eric had called 911, it meant he was there, at the scene. So, why hadn't he helped? Why hadn't he mentioned it? Because Eric hadn't been calling for help. He had been calling to make sure Nathan was dead. Nathan's hands shook as he shut off his phone. His whole body burned with adrenaline. He had his proof now. Something was being covered up, but confronting them now would be reckless. He needed a plan. Lauren and Eric had already betrayed him once. Now it was his turn to make a move. And this time he wouldn't be the one blindsided. The Lies Beneath. Part 4. Nathan lay in the hospital bed, his mind racing. His body was weak, but his resolve had never been stronger. Lauren and Eric thought he was helpless, that he didn't remember enough to be a threat. But they were wrong. He knew. And now, it was time to make them believe he didn't. Playing the long game. The next morning, Lauren arrived with fresh coffee and a warm smile. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, placing a hand on his arm. Nathan forced a weak smile. "Better. The pain meds are helping." She studied his face as if searching for something. Doubt, suspicion. But he gave her nothing. "Good," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I was thinking, maybe when you're discharged, we could take some time away. Just the two of us. A fresh start. A fresh start." Nathan nearly laughed. His wife was plotting against him, and now she wanted to run before the truth caught up with her. "That sounds nice," he murmured. Lauren smiled, but her eyes remained unreadable. Lavro, February 13th, 2025, 10:04. "I'll start making plans." As she stepped away to take a call, Nathan's stomach twisted. He had to move fast. If she was planning something, it meant time was running out. Unraveling the truth. That afternoon, when Lauren left the hospital, Nathan made his first real move. He called the detective listed in his accident report. "Detective Reynolds," a gruff voice answered. "This is Nathan Wells," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I was in a car accident a few days ago. I need to know, was there any security footage from that night?" A pause. Then, the detective sighed. "We checked the area. No cameras where your car went off the road. The case was ruled accidental." Of course it was. No footage meant no proof. Nathan swallowed his frustration. "What about the 911 call?" "My friend, Eric Dawson, reported the crash." Another pause. "That's correct. Did he say he was a witness?" The detective hesitated. He claimed he was driving by and saw the wreck. He stopped to call 911, but said there was nothing he could do. Nathan's hands tightened into fists. Eric had been there, watching him bleed out. But why? A dangerous realization. Nathan ended the call and stared at the ceiling. His gut told him this wasn't just an affair. Lauren and Eric had done something bigger than just wanting him gone. What if the accident wasn't just about getting rid of him? What if it was about something else? His money? His company? Or something even worse? Nathan needed answers, and he knew exactly how to get them. That night, he sent Eric a message. "Nathan, hey, man, can you come by tomorrow? I need to talk." Seconds later, the typing bubbles appeared. "Eric, of course. I'll be there first thing." Nathan stared at the screen, his heartbeat steady. Tomorrow, the game would change, and Eric wouldn't see it coming. Next move, the confrontation. The Lies Beneath, Part 5. Nathan barely slept that night. His body ached, but his mind was sharper than ever. Tomorrow, everything would change. He needed to be smart. If he confronted Eric too soon, he might tip him off. But if he played his cards right, he could make Eric reveal the truth himself. So, when morning came, Nathan didn't act like a man who knew his best friend had betrayed him. He acted like a man who was lost, confused, and in desperate need of answers. The meeting. Eric arrived at the hospital early, carrying a cup of coffee as if nothing was wrong. "Hey, Mom, you look better," he said, forcing a smile. Nathan gave a tired chuckle. "Yeah, the painkillers help." Eric sat down in the chair beside him. "What's on your mind?" Nathan hesitated just long enough to seem unsure. Then he sighed. I keep having these flashes of the accident. It doesn't make sense." Eric tensed so slightly that most people wouldn't have noticed. But Nathan did. "What do you mean?" Nathan rubbed his temple. "I remember a car behind me. I swear it was following me for miles." He shook his head. But the police report said it was a single-car crash. No other vehicles involved. Eric let out a nervous laugh. "Maybe it's just a trauma messing with your memory." Nathan looked him in the eye. "Maybe, but there's something else." He lowered his voice, pretending to be uncertain. "The 911 call. It was you, wasn't it?" Eric froze. Just for a second. Then he quickly recovered. "Yeah, I was driving by and saw your car in the ditch. I called for help." Nathan nodded slowly, as if accepting the answer. But inside, his blood was boiling. "Liar." He took a deep breath. "Eric, you tell me if something was wrong, right?" He forced his voice to shake just enough. If she was hiding something? Eric's jaw tightened. Nathan saw the war playing out in his eyes. If Eric admitted anything, it would mean betraying Lauren. But if he denied it, he risked Nathan digging deeper. After a moment, Eric forced a smile. "Of course, man. You're overthinking this. Lauren loves you." Another lie. Nathan exhaled and gave a weak smile. "Yeah, maybe you're right." Lavro. 13 febbraio 2025 10:04. But as Eric sat back, relief washing over his face, Nathan made a silent promise. "I'll find out the truth. And when I do, you'll regret ever lying to me." The next step. That night, Nathan called his lawyer. "Mr. Wells," the man answered. "How can I help you?" Nathan took a deep breath. "I need you to do something for me." Quietly. "I want you to pull my financial records. I need to know if anything's been moved, anything suspicious." His lawyer hesitated. "Is there something specific you're looking for?" Nathan clenched his jaw. "I don't know yet, but I have a feeling someone's trying to take something from me." A pause. Then, "Understood. I'll get back to you soon." Nathan ended the call and stared at the ceiling. If Lauren and Eric were planning something bigger than just an affair, he'd find out. And when he did, he wouldn't be the one who paid the price. The Lies Beneath, Part 6. Nathan didn't have to wait long. The next morning, his lawyer called back. "Nathan, we need to talk. In person." His gut twisted. Whatever had been found, it wasn't good. Lauren had stepped out to run errands, so Nathan took the call in private. "Just tell me," he said, gripping the phone. His lawyer hesitated. "There's been movement in your accounts. Large sums have been transferred between holdings over the past few months. It looks like someone's been consolidating assets, but the timing is strange." Nathan frowned. "How strange?" "A week before your accident, one of your joint accounts with Lauren was emptied. Almost $500,000 gone." Nathan's blood ran cold. Lauren had moved their money days before the crash. "What account did she move it to?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. "That's where things get interesting," his lawyer said. "It wasn't moved to another account under her name." Nathan gritted his teeth. "Then where?" There was a pause. "Then, an offshore account, under Eric Dawson." Nathan nearly crushed his phone in his grip. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to disappear. Together. With his money. His vision blurred with rage, but he forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't explode. Not yet. If they thought he was still blind to it all, he could use that. "Send me everything," Nathan said. "I want every detail." His lawyer agreed, and Nathan ended the call, his mind already racing ahead. Laying the trap. Nathan knew he had to act fast. If Lauren and Eric were this deep into their plan, they might try to finish the job. He needed proof, something undeniable that would bury them. And he had the perfect idea. That night, Nathan waited until Lauren was asleep. Then, he unlocked her phone with her fingerprint, something she had done absent-mindedly in front of him countless times. He scrolled through her messages. Sure enough, there were texts from Eric. He's starting to ask questions. "You think he remembers?" "Lauren, I don't know, but we need to move fast." "Eric, should we do it before or after the transfer clears?" "Lauren, after." No mistakes this time. Nathan's hands clenched into fists. No mistakes this time. So they had tried before. Maybe the accident was their first attempt. And when he survived, they had to come up with something else. Nathan took screenshots of everything and sent them to his personal email. Then he deleted the evidence from Lauren's phone and placed it back exactly as it was. He couldn't let them know he was onto them. Not yet. Instead, he would let them think they'd won. Then, when the moment was right, he destroyed them both. What's next? The Lies Beneath, Part 7. ***. Nathan had everything he needed. The proof. The motive. The betrayal. Lauren and Eric had been playing a dangerous game, and they thought they were winning. But now, Nathan was the one holding all the cards. And it was time to make his move. Setting the stage. The next morning, Nathan acted normal. He let Lauren fuss over him, let her feed him lies with a smile. "I was thinking," she said over breakfast, "maybe we should get away for a while. Just us." Lavro. February 13th, 2025, 10:04. Somewhere quiet. Nathan knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted him isolated. She and Eric were planning to finish the job. He played along. "That sounds perfect," he said with a weak smile. Lauren's eyes flickered with something. Relief? Good. Let her feel safe. As soon as she left the room, Nathan grabbed his phone and made 2 calls. The first was to his lawyer. "Freeze every account under my name. Immediately." The second was to Detective Reynolds. "I need to report a crime," Nathan said, his voice steady. "Attempted murder. And I have the proof. Breaking Eric." That afternoon, Nathan sent Eric a text. "Nathan, I know." Less than a minute later, Eric called. Nathan let it ring. Let him sweat. Then he texted again. "Nathan, meet me tonight. No Loudon. Just us." Eric took the bait. They met at an abandoned construction site on the outskirts of town. Eric arrived first, pacing nervously. When he saw Nathan, his face paled. "You're out of the hospital?" Eric stammered. Nathan stepped closer, his face unreadable. "You should have made sure I was dead, Eric." Eric swallowed hard. "Nathan, listen." "No. You listen." Nathan's voice was calm, deadly. "I know about the money, the affair, and the fact that you and Lauren planned my death." Eric took a step back. "It's not what you think." Nathan pulled out his phone and played a voice recording. Lauren's texts read aloud. Eric's face twisted in horror. You set me up?" "No," Nathan said, taking another step forward. "You set yourself up." Eric panicked. "Nathan, we can fix this. We'll disappear, Lauren and I. Just let us go. You'll never see us again." Nathan smiled. Exactly what I wanted to hear. Lights flashed. Sirens screamed in the distance. Eric spun around. "What?" Nathan held up his phone. "I've been recording this whole conversation, and I sent it to the police." Eric's face turned white. Nathan watched as the squad cars swarmed the lot. "Game over, Eric." The final blow. As Eric was dragged into a police car, Nathan made one last call. Lauren answered on the first ring. "Hey, babe, where are you?" Nathan smiled coldly. "I'm exactly where I need to be." And with that, he hung up, because Lauren was next. What's next? The Lies Beneath. Part 8. The police had Eric in custody, but Nathan's job wasn't finished. He still had to deal with Lauren. She had no idea what was coming. For the past few hours, Nathan had been waiting in his apartment, making sure everything was in place. His lawyer had already sent over the paperwork to freeze all of their accounts, and the police were finalizing the charges against Eric. Now he just needed to get Lauren to reveal herself. The confrontation. When Lauren came home, she acted like everything was fine. She walked in with that warm smile of hers, as if nothing had changed. "Hey, babe, how are you feeling today?" Nathan didn't respond right away. Instead, he sat in the dimly lit living room, watching her with a cold gaze. "You know," he said quietly, "it's funny how you think you can get away with everything. How you can manipulate everyone around you." Lauren froze. The smile slipped from her face. "What are you talking about?" Nathan stood up slowly, his movements deliberate. "I know about you and Eric. The money. The accident. The plan to take me out." She stepped back, her eyes wide with shock, but she tried to hide it behind a forced laugh. "You've lost your mind. You're still recovering from the crash, Nathan. You're imagining things." Nathan shook his head. "No, Loudon. I'm not imagining anything. I have the proof." He pulled out his phone and played the recording of her texts, the ones that detailed everything. Lauren's face went white as the words echoed in the silence. Her hands trembled. I don't know what you think you've heard, Nathan. That's not." She was scrambling, trying to pull herself together. Nathan stepped forward, his voice low and menacing. "Don't lie to me. I've seen everything. I've heard everything. And now, the truth is coming for you." Lavro. February 13th, 2025, 10:04. Lauren's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape, but there was nowhere to run. The final betrayal. Before she could say anything else, Nathan spoke again. I've already sent the recording to the police. You're done. The money's already been traced, and they're coming for you next. Lauren's face contorted with panic. You wouldn't do that to me, Nathan. I love you. You can't. Nathan laughed darkly, the sound cold and emotionless. You think I'm going to let you walk away after everything you've done? After the plan you set in motion to kill me for money? Her eyes filled with desperation. You don't understand. Please, Nathan, just listen to me. We can fix this. We can go away together. We can start over. Nathan's smile was cold, unrecognizable. You don't get it. You've already lost. The endgame. The sound of sirens echoed outside the apartment, growing louder by the second. Lauren's breath hitched as she realized what was happening. Please, Nathan, she whispered, but it was too late. Before she could say anything else, the door burst open. The police stormed in, led by Detective Reynolds. Lauren Wells, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and theft. Lauren collapsed to her knees, her face twisted in disbelief. No, this can't be happening. No, Nathan, please. Nathan stood back, watching as the officers cuffed her and let her out. The rush of satisfaction was almost overwhelming. The woman who had betrayed him, who had thought she could get away with everything, was finally facing the consequences. But as Lauren was dragged out of the apartment, Nathan felt something inside him snap. It was over. The aftermath. With both Eric and Lauren behind bars, Nathan felt the weight lifting off his shoulders. The betrayal, the pain, it was all starting to fade. But there was one last thing he had to do. He stood before his bedroom mirror, staring at his reflection. The man staring back at him wasn't the broken man he had once been. He wasn't the man who had trusted blindly. No, he was something different now. Something sharper, stronger. Nathan Wells had taken back his life, and no one would ever take it from him again. What's next? The Lies Beneath, Part 9. The days following Lauren's arrest were a blur for Nathan. The satisfaction of seeing her pay for her betrayal quickly turned into a suffocating emptiness. Eric was still in jail, awaiting trial, but Nathan couldn't bring himself to feel joy. There was no triumph in destroying the people who had meant the most to him. Not anymore. He spent the first few weeks in a haze, his phone buzzing constantly with calls from the police, his lawyer, and even the press. He avoided them all. What did it matter? The people who had once loved him, who he had trusted without question, were gone. The first crack. It was late one evening when Nathan found himself sitting alone in his living room, staring at the half-empty bottle of whiskey on the coffee table. His mind raced with memories of the days before everything fell apart. The way Lauren had kissed him that morning, the smile on Eric's face when they shared inside jokes. It felt like another life. He picked up his phone and scrolled through their old messages. Lauren's text. We'll be fine, Nathan. Just trust me. He closed his eyes. The words that once comforted him now felt like a knife twisting in his gut. Trust me. But trust had been nothing more than a lie. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from his lawyer. Nathan, I've just received some troubling news. The authorities have found something else. Something that might change everything. Nathan's heart dropped. He gripped the phone tighter. What could possibly be worse than everything I've already been through? The lawyer's reply came quickly. It's your financial records. It seems there's a secondary account, one you didn't know about. And there's more. Nathan's pulse raced. What the hell does this mean? The discovery. Lavro. February 13th, 2025, 10:04. The following day, Nathan met with his lawyer in person. What's this about a secondary account? Nathan demanded, his voice sharp. The lawyer handed him a file, thick with pages of printouts. As Nathan flipped through the documents, his stomach churned. There in black and white was a second account, one linked to his name, but with transactions he had never authorized. And there were recent withdrawals just days after the accident. Nathan's eyes widened as he looked at the final line. Transferred to Lauren Wells' offshore account, under her alias. Lauren hadn't just planned the crash. She had planned to clean him out, leave him for dead, and disappear with his money. But there was more. As Nathan read further, his breath caught in his throat. A name. Eric Dawson. Not just as a partner in the scheme, but as someone who had benefited from the transactions. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just about money. It was a carefully crafted plan to make sure Nathan wouldn't survive, and then to steal his life away from him. The final betrayal. Nathan couldn't process it. His world, which had already been shattered, now felt like it was collapsing in on him. He walked out of the lawyer's office in a daze, everything around him fading into a blur. How could he have been so blind? Then, As he stood on the street corner, a voice called out to him. It was Detective Reynolds. "Nathan," the detective shouted, running up to him. Nathan turned, and his heart stopped. "Lauren, she's out," Reynolds said, his voice grim. "What?" Nathan stammered. "What do you mean out? She was arrested. She made bail. She used the money from the offshore account to pay for her release." Nathan's mind spun. Everything was unraveling, and he couldn't stop it. The tragic twist. That night, as Nathan sat alone in his apartment, staring into the empty space that used to feel like home, the phone rang again. It was a text from an unknown number. "You've lost. It was never about you. It was always about me and Eric. I was just using you to get what I wanted. The end is near." Nathan's blood ran cold as he recognized the sender. It was Lauren's number. Her words haunted him, sinking into his mind like a dark, cold poison. He grabbed his coat, rushing to the door. He couldn't wait for the police. He couldn't wait for justice. He had been betrayed by the one person he trusted most in the world. And now, she was coming for him. But as he stepped out into the night, the last thing he expected was what happened next. The endgame, Lauren was waiting for him, standing across the street, her face illuminated by the dim glow of the streetlights. "Nathan." Her voice was almost a whisper, but it was sharp enough to cut through the silence. Nathan's heart pounded as he approached her. "What do you want, Lauren?" She smiled, sadly, almost like a predator who had already won. "I want everything you tried to take from me, Nathan. I want you." Before Nathan could react, there was a loud crack, and everything went black. The final twist. Nathan never saw it coming. The end was here, but who pulled the trigger? Was it Lauren? Was it someone else trying to silence him? The truth is lost in the shadows.